Hey heroes, welcome to another galactic episode of History of the Marvel Universe. This channel is sponsored in part by Patreon supporters. If you would like to vote in monthly polls that help decide what topics get covered on the channel, then you can sign up for $1 per month over at patreon.com/MaryMarvelate. The link is in the description below. Michael Korvac was born on the blue area of Earth's moon in the year 2977 AD of reality 691. I talked in depth about the history of that timeline in my video about the original Guardians of the Galaxy. His father, Jordan, died on the day he was born, and his mother, Myra, told him that it was the Guardians who were responsible. Since time travel was involved, we'll circle back around to the circumstances surrounding those events a little later. By the time he was an adult, Michael Korvac had grown into an accomplished computer technician, but felt underappreciated and undervalued by his superiors. And so he willingly allied himself with a hostile alien faction, the Brotherhood of the Badoon, who plotted to invade the entire solar system. Attaining a modest position within their empire by the year 2997, he monitored the analytical systems of entire planets. He even betrayed and murdered his fellow humans to accomplish this, at one point infiltrating a unit who'd found evidence of the Badoon's invasion plans and preventing them from warning the Earth. However, he was eventually overwhelmed by the weight of what he had done and stepped away from his workstation to cry. This was enough for his masters to turn on him and deliver swift punishment for abandoning his duties. It has also been said that the Badoon overworked Korvac to the point of exhaustion in an account from Michael himself. In either case, Korvac was converted into a cyborg and his entire lower body was amputated from the waist down. What remained was grafted onto a special systems module, transforming him into a living computer, and ensuring that he would never cease working again, or so the Badoon believed. In truth, Korvac was able to seize full control of his new form and rebel against his alien masters. However, his own schemes of conquest were interrupted when he was drawn into a cosmic game being played by the Elder of the Universe, known as the Grand Master, and the robotic gamesman called the Prime Mover. In this game, the Grand Master chose Doctor Strange and his heroic team, the Defenders, to act as his champions, while Korvac was made to fight on the Prime Mover's behalf. With his cyborg brain and computerized weapons terminal, Korvac was able to analyze and counter Strange's mystical attacks. He also anticipated that the sorcerer would resort to using his fists and feigned defeat upon being struck. While he appeared to be broken, he was actually analyzing a portion of the Grandmaster's cosmic energies and gained the ability to teleport. Upon returning to the 31st century, he relocated to an uninhabited planetoid and used his new knowledge to begin building. From there, he sent probes out into time and space, retrieving technology, resources, and servants. This included his minions of menace, Teju, Torque, Dumag, Brawl, and Grot, several of which were also used by the Prime Mover in his game with the Grandmaster. However, while stealing one device from the past, he also inadvertently pulled the mighty Thor forward in time. Korvac planned to force the sun to go nova and harness the energy released to power his machines for millennia. Of course, these plans were thwarted by the combined forces of Thor and the Guardians of the Galaxy. While the Thunder God and Starhawk confronted Korvac, the rest of the Guardians defeated his minions of menace. While his base was destroyed, Korvac himself escaped, traveling backwards in time to the era from which Thor was pulled, the Marvel Age of Heroes. Although he did leave behind a computer chip containing his knowledge and programming. Now, I will note here that due to the nature of time travel and the multiverse, when individuals travel between two eras like this, they're technically moving between timelines. Whereas Korvac and the Guardians of the Galaxy originate from reality 691, the heroes of the Marvel Age exist on Earth 616, in what is now considered the Prime Marvel Universe. Of course, versions of those heroes also lived in the 691 timeline, but were mostly killed during the War of the Worlds in the 21st century. Again, for the full details on those events, refer to my video about the original Guardians linked in the description. But for the purposes of this video, unless otherwise stated, the Marvel Age I'm referring to will be that of the Prime reality, while the 31st century will, of course, be the future timeline that Korvac originated from. All that aside, once Korvac arrived in the Age of Heroes, he sought a new avenue for power and discovered the world ship of the planet Eater Galactus. Finding it abandoned, he succeeded in accessing the cosmic computer systems, and with it, incredible knowledge, technology, and power. Absorbing this into his already enhanced mind, he attained a heightened level of awareness and ascended into a godlike state. The first thing he did with his new abilities was remake his physical form into a perfect version of his original human body. However, his expanded consciousness also afforded him a new perspective. Abandoning the pursuit of revenge, he instead began plotting to usurp control of the universe and impose just order as a benevolent overseer. And as part of this plan, he used his power to hide his presence from other cosmic entities. However, at least one being became aware of Korvac, the Collector Tanalir Tavan. Like the Grandmaster who we mentioned earlier, he was one of the Elders of the universe. Korvac traveled to Earth and moved into the quiet neighborhood of Forest Hills Gardens, where he plotted his next move. Meanwhile, the Collector sent his daughter to keep an eye on Korvac, attracting his attention by posing as a fashion model under the name Karina Walters. But upon making contact, the two actually fell in love and were married soon thereafter. While unaware of his apotheosis, the Guardians also pursued Korvac into the past, fearing how he might attempt to alter the future. It wouldn't necessarily have affected the timeline he came from, but as Iron Man pointed out, he could have created an alternate future where the Guardians didn't exist, allowing him to go unopposed in the 31st century. The Guardians joined forces with the Avengers to protect Vance Astrovic, the younger incarnation of founding Guardian Vance Astro, who lived as a child in that time period. Meanwhile, another Guardian, Starhawk, was able to find their enemy using a sort of awareness or precognition power that's a little too convoluted to explain here, and attacked him alone. Starhawk was powerful, but Korvac had attained an even higher level of strength and reduced his foe to dust. To preserve his secrecy, he then restored Starhawk to life, but erased any knowledge of their encounter and robbed him of his ability to perceive him. He then sent him back to the other heroes with the belief that their mission to watch over and protect Vance Astrovic was paramount. After that, the Collector began abducting Avengers, hoping to keep them alive throughout the coming Armageddon. His daughter Karina, meanwhile, was conflicted and was about to contact him before deciding not to. Korvac sensed this momentary betrayal, but upon looking into his wife's soul, could see that she truly did love him. And so she told him the truth about why she was on Earth and who had sent her. As a result, Korvac struck at her father from afar, destroying the Collector before he could reveal the enemy's identity to the Avengers. All of this was of course difficult for Karina, who was racked with guilt and unsure of her feelings. However, her love for her husband prevailed, and the two joined together, both carnally and cosmically, fully sharing their lives, secrets, and power. But after that, Iron Man succeeded in determining where the blast that killed the Collector had come from, leading the heroes to Michael's front door. Not realizing that he was Michael Korvac, the Avengers searched the property, initially finding nothing suspicious. But then they realized that Starhawk was incapable of seeing or hearing their host, and the jig was up. Realizing now that it was only a matter of time before the other cosmic forces in the universe took notice, Korvac unveiled his godly power and went on the offensive. In his opening salvo, he destroyed the Guardian space station, killing the adult Vance Astro. The remaining Guardians and Avengers did not fare much better, as one by one they fell to his power. Quicksilver, Captain Marvel, Black Panther, the Scarlet Witch, and Captain America were just a few of those slaughtered by Korvac. It took the combined efforts of Vision, Starhawk, Iron Man, and Thor to even stagger him. While that fight was happening off in space, Galactus returned to his world ship and realized that someone had been there. In response to this, he retrieved from containment one of the most powerful weapons in the universe, the Ultimate Nullifier. This deceptively small device is capable of not only destroying virtually any target, but completely erasing them from existence. The Ultimate Nullifier cannot be wielded by just anyone, mind you, as it requires intense mental effort to fire, and could easily destroy the one attempting to use it when triggered. But in the hands of someone like Galactus, the beam of nullification shot across the universe towards its target. At the same moment that he was being struck by the four heroes, Korvac sensed the dangerous beam approaching. He turned towards Karina for aid, hoping that their combined power could resist the nullifier. But she was horrified by the bloodshed that he had wrought and hesitated. Unwilling to continue without her support, Korvac ceased fighting and ended his own life in an attempt to prevent the nullifier from completely annihilating him. Meanwhile, the beam was redirected by a time-traveling Mr. Fantastic, but that will make sense later. In order to ensure his rebirth, Korvac placed aspects of his essence, including his knowledge, power, and personality, into a sort of cosmic gene packet. He sent this out to inhabit one of his ancestors so that it would be passed down through the generations until it was returned to him. And ironically, Korvac's apparent death caused Karina to go mad with grief, and she began killing the heroes who remained. Ultimately, however, she decided that she no longer wished to fight and allowed Thor to strike her down, seemingly compelling him to do so. However, that attack may actually have been caused by Korvac himself, who elected to free himself from the weakness of human emotion. In either case, Michael and Karina Korvac died only inches from one another, but not before resurrecting the fallen heroes. In the wake of Korvac's death, the Avenger Moondragon mourned his passing, having read his mind and seen his ostensibly benevolent plans. Meanwhile, Karina's physical form converted into dormant energy and dropped into the dimension known as the Underspace. Despite that, the souls of Michael and Karina Korvac were apparently drawn into the domain of death, where they were watched over by the cosmic embodiments of order and chaos. However, Michael was seemingly released, albeit briefly, when the Grandmaster usurped the power of death. That was after he sacrificed his own life to resurrect the Collector, who helped him accomplish this. With Death's power, the Grandmaster assembled a Legion of the Unliving to participate in another game. Michael Korvac was among their number, but it's impossible to say for sure if this was truly Korvac's soul, or simply a facsimile created by the Grandmaster as he had done for others. In either case, his clash with the Silver Surfer during the contest ended in a draw, and Michael ostensibly returned to death. But after the Guardians returned to the 31st century, Starhawk sensed that Korvac would threaten the universe once again. Traveling back to the Marvel Age, arriving sometime after their previous encounter with Korvac, they joined forces with the Fantastic Four to find their enemy. They tracked him to Australia, where they found Korvac's cosmic energy inhabiting his ancestor Jaboa Murphy. In order to end that threat, Mr. Fantastic asked the Aboriginal mutant Gateway to send him to Forest Hills Gardens and return him after a set amount of time. There, he used a miniaturized time platform to travel back to the day that the Avengers and Guardians battled Korvac in his suburban home, so that he could redirect the ultimate nullification beam sent by Galactus through the time portal and teleportation gateway simultaneously, causing it to instead target the possessed Australian teenager. Avoiding annihilation once again, Korvac's gene packet ejected itself and escaped into the time stream, and with its intended target no longer existing in that reality, the nullification beam simply ceased to exist. Using the device built by Mr. Fantastic to track it, the Guardians followed Korvac's consciousness into the year 2591 of Earth 8710, the Age of Corporations. In that timeline, a freedom fighter named Dargo Kator wielded the hammer and identity of Thor. There, Korvac empowered a disgruntled Central Corp employee named Varley, who battled Kator and the Guardians. However, he was ultimately overwhelmed by this power and consumed by it. The gene packet, meanwhile, escaped again, jumping backwards an unspecified number of decades and shifting over to Korvac's native timeline, Reality 691. It inhabited his ancestor Marshak, who used the power to transform his human colony into an idyllic paradise. Eliminating hunger, sickness, and violence, he was worshipped like a god by the other colonists for many years. The Guardians again found him in the late 26th century, but Marshak was defended by the Silver Surfer, who by this point had donned the quantum bands and become the protector of the universe. In the end, though, the Guardians explained the situation, and Marshak's wife, Karina, convinced him to voluntarily renounce his power. The sacrifice was hers as much as it was his, for while she appeared youthful, he had been keeping them both alive beyond their natural lifespans. And so upon the relinquishing of Korvac's power, Karina rapidly aged and passed away, with Marshak joining her soon thereafter. The Guardians followed the packet again, this time tracking it to the year 2977, the year of Michael Korvac's birth. There it inhabited Michael's father, Jordan, and caused him to believe that the Guardians were a threat to his unborn son. Seeking to defend his family, Jordan Korvac preemptively attacked the heroes with his inherited power. While all of that was going on, his wife Myra was in labor and gave birth during the fight. Within minutes of emerging from the womb, the newborn Michael Korvac reached out and seized the power granted to his father by his older self. However, the sudden transfer proved fatal for Jordan, who was reduced to a charred and withered corpse. The Guardians intended on stopping Michael before his abilities manifested, but were too late. The newborn Korvac confronted them, armed with the knowledge, memories, and power of his adult self. Fortunately, they were aided by Dr. Strange, who by that point had adopted the role of the Ancient One, and his disciple, Kruger. With powerful magic, Kruger was able to ensnare the baby in a mystical globe, long enough to bring him to the one from whom his power and knowledge was originally stolen, Galactus. Not one to bear a grudge, the World Eater simply reclaimed this cosmic power, rendering the newborn human once more. He returned the child to the heroes unharmed, leaving them to decide his fate. The Guardians debated ending the threat of Michael Korvac then and there, but ultimately decided that the ends couldn't possibly justify the means and returned the newborn to his mother. Myra, however, blamed the Guardians for her husband's death and refused to listen to anything they had to say. She vowed that she would raise Michael to believe that they were his enemy, which brings us full circle to where the story began. However, we do have some time left, and there are other incarnations of Korvac to mention. If you recall, when he was a cyborg in the 31st century, before traveling back to the Marvel Age and attaining godlike power, Korvac employed a group of underlings. After their defeat at the hands of the Guardians and their master's disappearance, these minions of menace started calling themselves the Intimidators, and sought to restore Korvac. They planned to accomplish this using the computer chip that the cyborg Korvac had imprinted with his knowledge and programming before fleeing to the past. By this era, the Vision had merged with alien machines to become the sentient computer system Mainframe. By combining the Korvac chip with Mainframe's systems, the Intimidators were able to give rise to a new version of their master, albeit a violently insane one. To combat this threat, several of the Guardians' allies came together to form a second team dubbed the Galactic Guardians. In the end, that version of Korvac was destroyed by the Phoenix of that era, and Mainframe was restored. There have also been incarnations of Korvac in other timelines, notable among them being Reality 82432. In that universe, events unfolded almost identically to Earth 616, with Korvac arriving from the future, attaining godlike power, marrying Karina Walters, and battling the Avengers. However, things notably diverged at the exact moment in which Thor, Starhawk, Iron Man, and Vision attacked him simultaneously. Whereas in the main timeline, Karina was horrified by Korvac's slaughter of the Avengers, on this Earth her support for him was unwavering and Michael was emboldened. With his godlike power, he killed the rest of the heroes and others who might oppose him. Having no need for allies, he even killed Moondragon when she offered to pledge herself to his cause. Although he did resurrect several Avengers, transforming them into his loyal servants. He also completely sealed off that reality, preventing interference from parallel dimensions or timelines. In the face of this threat, the Watcher of that reality abandoned his sacred oath and assembled a contingent of cosmic forces to oppose him. However, Korvac dispatched his enslaved Avengers to retrieve the one weapon that might destroy him, the Ultimate Nullifier. He also instructed Captain America to use that weapon on Galactus. Although Cap's concentration was evidently less than perfect as he was erased along with the World Eater. Korvac even resisted the judgment of the Living Tribunal by protecting the Earth when the Tribunal destroyed the Sun. For those unaware, the Living Tribunal is one of the highest authorities in the entire multiverse, second only to the enigmatic supreme being known as the One Above All. And so the Tribunal decided to leave that reality to its fate, keeping it sealed off from the rest of the multiverse and preventing Korvac from escaping. Eventually, Korvac came to the conclusion that while he was able to defeat any being in the universe, he may not be able to overcome the combined forces of every being in the universe. And so he attempted to increase his strength by absorbing the life energy of every being on Earth. All except for Karina, although she willingly offered her own life soon thereafter. With an alien armada made up of every race in the universe bearing down on him, Michael Korvac sat upon the Earth and confronted them with the Ultimate Nullifier. But in that moment, with the universe in his mind and death in his heart, Korvac activated the cosmic weapon and completely erased everyone and everything in that reality, including himself. While that marked an end to that timeline, the original Earth 691 Korvac would continue to be reborn in new forms. He eventually resurfaced on Earth 616 with a new cyborg body while retaining some of his cosmic power. By posing as Kang the Conqueror, he manipulated the Red Skrull into absorbing the reality-altering energies of the Cosmic Cube. Then, by tricking Captain America into killing the Skrull, he was able to usurp that power, as well as the energy of Galactus's world ship. Nearly omnipotent, Korvac returned to the future and created a divergent timeline in which he established a machine-dominated technocracy with unwavering loyalty to him. In this new reality, he completely subjugated the Badoon as revenge for their treatment of him in his first life. Captain America made repeated attempts to overthrow Korvac, and while the Mad God simply reset time to purge these events from his reality and prevent defeat, he also allowed the hero to retain his memories across hundreds of battles, hoping to break his spirit. Eventually, however, the captain succeeded in convincing Korvac that he had retained too much of his own humanity to craft a truly perfect mechanical society that was devoid of free will. In an attempt to change this, he reset time back to just before he absorbed the Red Skull's cosmic power, but this time Cap refused to kill the Skrull, altering the timeline once again. As a result, this time the Red Skrull killed Korvac, scattering his essence across 6 dimensions. Of course, Captain America soon defeated the Red Skrull anyway, tricking him into entering a beam of antimatter. Sometime after all of that, the heroes of Earth battled a fanatical sect of alien Skrulls who were attempting to enact the final phase of their secret invasion to conquer the planet. We've talked about the details of those events elsewhere on the channel, but the relevant thing for today is that the alien invaders transformed the Avenger, Janet Van Dyne, into a living bomb. In order to save the Earth, Thor was forced to shunt Janet's molecules into an extra-dimensional plane. Her ex-husband, Hank Pym, began searching for her and believed he'd located her when he found a woman in an expanding energy form in the realm known as Underspace. He began making preparations to restore her, but despite the temptation to act on emotion, he decided to ensure that all the variables were accounted for before pulling the switch and completing the process. But in an attempt to do something positive, his student, Vale, activated the machine without authorization. But it turns out that it wasn't really Janet Van Dyne who Pym had found, but Karina Walters Korvac, whose molecules had fallen into Underspace following her death. You see, her energy form only resembled Janet because Pym had fed it her memories. Furthermore, Karina's return caught the attention of Korvac's scattered consciousness, basically acting as a beacon for his molecules to come together in a new cosmic form. Korvac wished to retrieve his wife, but she no longer wanted to be with him and rejected him. Aided by Karina's cosmic powers, Pym's students in Avengers Academy were able to repel Korvac by bathing him in antimatter and scattering his molecules once again. Having earned her freedom, Karina then left to explore the universe and find a new purpose, although she knew that Korvac would return again eventually. When he next resurfaced, it was during the time when the multiverse was collapsing due to the incursions caused by the Beyonders known as the Ivory Kings. He attempted to undo the mistakes of previous incarnations by returning to his early cyborg form and altering the time stream from his home in Forest Hills. He was confronted by the Guardians of the Galaxy, but quickly became aware of the multiversal collapse that was occurring and his inability to stop it. Most of reality was destroyed shortly thereafter, but for the details on that you can check out my video on the Molecule Man. In any event, largely thanks to the efforts of the Fantastic Four, the multiverse was eventually reborn and restored. This included Korvac's cyborg body, which was subsequently acquired by Carlo Zota, one of the scientists responsible for creating Adam Warlock. Zota transferred Korvac into a new android body, transforming him into a synthezoid similar to the original Human Torch, albeit without the same flaming powers. Whereas the Torch has sometimes been referred to as Adam 1, this incarnation of Korvac was Adam 4. Assembling a team of villains, he began making his way to Galactus's world ship once again, seeking to reclaim his godlike power. This time his plan was to attain a universal peace by joining every consciousness together as a single homogeneous entity. He was pursued by a team of heroes led by Iron Man, but for the full story there, you should check out the Iron Man series by Christopher Cantwell that started in 2020. Since Hellcat is heavily involved in that series as well, I'd also recommend checking out my video about her since it will provide a lot more context for her backstory. But that's all I have for you this week, and thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, be sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and share it on your favorite social media. As always, the issues referenced in this video are listed in the description below if you would like to read them for yourself, as well as links to other places you can find me, including my Patreon page where you can get your name in these special thanks here. So until next time, true believers, Excelsior!